Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Gridiron Nation Online for another week here at NBC4i.com and, of course, NBC4's Facebook page is probably where many of you will be seeing us here this afternoon. And when you see us, that's your best way to ask a question or make a comment about the Ohio State season so far. Joined today by our Buckeye analyst, Coach Bill Conley, as we get started for the first breather week, the bye week. It's like that classic debate, Bill, of rest versus rust. What does a coach do when you get ready for a bye week? Ohio State has steamrolled through 6 weeks. They've looked really good. How do you as a coach balance giving them the rest they need versus losing the momentum they've built?
Well, some part of the routine you want to keep the same.
Sure.
You want to keep the practice schedules basically the same. Maybe you don't go quite as long or as hard as sometimes, but you got to keep a lot of things the same. At the same time, it allows a coach to get caught up on some things that he hasn't been able to do, like, for example, recruiting. So that'll take place. Most importantly of all, though, it gives a chance for the guys to heal up a little bit, get their academics in line, and things like that to get ready for the rest of the season. So,
again, if you want to make a comment, you want to ask a question of Coach Conley and I here as we get through the afternoon talking Buckeye football, obviously without a game this week, it's more of a review of the 6 weeks and maybe a preview of what's to come here down the pike. Do it right there in the comments section on NBC4's Facebook page. You put your comment right in there. You tell us what you think, what you want us to think, your opinion of the season so far, highs, lows, successes, deficiencies. Ask the coach any question you want to know about Buckeye football. We'll get you an answer here in the next few minutes here on NBC4 Facebook. First of all, Bill, let's talk about the 6 weeks so far. What's the biggest takeaway, the thing you learned about this team that you did not know going in?
Well, I think that all three phases of the game, offense and defense and special teams, have really come together well. They're complementing each other. We are a complete football team. You know, we talked about the depth early in the year, and we thought it was going to be good. It's even better than we expected. So just the improvement on the defensive side, a young quarterback playing tremendously, and special teams, again, making big plays.
Yeah, it's been and you watch the best example that I think is this past Saturday against the best opponent they've played so far and certainly the best defense they've played so far.
Right.
You saw Ohio State make standout plays in all three phases, and I think the second quarter might be one of the best quarters of football you're ever going to see Ohio State play. That takeaway, Bill, I think is the most impressive element we saw of the first 6 weeks, and that's saying something. It's been a pretty impressive 6 weeks, but that second quarter against Michigan State, that's going to be hard to replicate all year long.
Exactly right. And the stat, if I had to pick one stat in this game that was a teller, yards rushing.
Yeah.
Against a team that had held their opponents to 65 yards per game rushing, we rushed for over 320. That right there tells you, as the offensive line kept coming at the defensive front of Michigan State, you just wore them down. You could see the Michigan State team going in the locker room at halftime. His weren't quite as up as they were at the end of the first quarter.
Sure, and rightfully so, because it was starting to go downhill on them pretty fast. It was a game, though, that could have turned very quickly. You know, Michigan State missed a wide-open receiver who would have walked in the end zone for a touchdown there in the second quarter, would have narrowed things up. Buckeyes missed a long one down to Benjamin Victor. It was as pretty a throw as Justin Fields could make, hit in a terrible spot, hit him right in the hands.
Yeah.
Running downfield, dropped it. Both teams had those moments that they'd like to have back. So ultimately, the score kind of worked out the way it should. But 2 fumbles on the first 2 possessions for Michigan State, just an awful way to start on the road. And they were still very competitive. I think it maybe gives you a little indication what you're going to see this weekend. Michigan State goes to Wisconsin this weekend. And if you think Wisconsin's going to roll the way Ohio State rolled, I'm not so sure. I mean, they might, but I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Michigan State, if they eliminate those mistakes, to be right in that game.
Well, they should be. They really should be, because let's take the strong point of Michigan State is their defense. The strong point of Wisconsin, they've been playing very good defense also for unusual, but they're used to running the football at you also. So you're going to run up against another offense that's going to be coming right after them. So it's going to be a great battle.
Again, your comments and questions, go to the Facebook, NBC4 Facebook, where many of you are watching us right now live on the feed. Hi to everyone watching. If you want to ask a question or make a comment about the Ohio State season so far, just put it right there in the comment tab, and we'll get it here for you on the air. First one up for Coach from Aaron Chapman. Aaron says, Fields for Heisman, very simply. So I wanted to make this point about Justin Fields, about the possibility of a candidacy. Obviously, people didn't know who he was 6 weeks ago, very much, other than in high recruiting circles. Maybe fans of the Georgia Bulldogs knew who he was. But now the country knows who he is, and they have seen him play in a couple primetime games in spectacular fashion, Bill. He's been accurate. He's been consistent. He has not made terrible mistakes. Matter of fact, the one interception he threw last week, Ryan Day this week
he took the
blame for the interception because he said he put his quarterback in a bad position.
Right.
Overall, you can't ask for more from what Justin Fields and what he's delivered.
Absolutely. He has played phenomenal, and he's scored with, via the air, via his feet. And the thing is, he was a guy, like you said, it wasn't even talked about early. He was unproven as a quarterback. And early in the season, he was starting to come in the top 10. Now he's starting to be in the top 5.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that, if he keeps performing like this, will definitely be a guy that gets the invitation to New York. Don't know if he'll win it, but he should definitely get the invitation.
Well, you're right about the opportunity because he's going to have these high-profile games coming up. He's got at least 3 biggies. He's going to have Wisconsin, he's going to have Penn State, and he's going to have the big one.
Right.
And those are 3 glorified showcase games in a college football season. The stage is there, and if you take advantage of all those, it's going to be hard not to win. Certainly hard not to get invited for him. If he plays as well as he can, those are going to be great opportunities for him, especially considering the kinds of defenses Ohio State's going to face throughout the rest of this year. We were just joking a second ago before we came on air with you here. You know where Ohio State ranks right now in scoring defense in the Big Ten?
Well, I'm sure they're in the top 5.
You would think they'd be, right. They're 4th. Ohio State is 4th in the league in scoring defense. That's how good the Big Ten right now is defensively. With Wisconsin, with what obviously Penn State has done this season, they've both been remarkable. And you got Iowa and Ohio State playing remarkable defense. You add it together, it's a hard league to score right now, and that's what's awaiting Ohio State, the bulk of those good defenses.
Yeah, and the number of points we're scoring is just phenomenal. Like you said, the thing we've been able to do is get on top of teams in the first half. And the second quarter was an example the other day, but we're scoring, I think it's 139 points, or 134 points in the second quarter alone. Now think about that, 134 in the second quarter. And that's more than some teams have scored all year.
Yes, it is.
So if you put that many points up against great defenses, yeah, obviously you're going to have a chance to be there and win it all. Other quarterbacks are having good years, though. You talk about Hurts at Oklahoma. You talk about Tua down in Alabama. You talk about Joe Burrow. And and then there's a running back at Wisconsin. Mr. Taylor is pretty good. J.K. Dobbins is coming on. He's 180 yards from going over 1,000 yards for the season.
That's right.
So there's a lot of football yet to be played.
J.K. is the 2nd leading rusher in the country.
Exactly.
Stunning. But obviously he's played one more game than Taylor has. So he's got another game on his tool belt there. Per game average, Taylor's I think around 149, almost 150 yards per game, leading the conference, obviously. But
who's the 4th leading rusher in the Big Ten?
I'll tell you who it is.
Who is it?
Master Teague is who it is. It's incredible.
We got the master and the slasher. I'm not kidding. Boom. Dobbins is a slashing running back, makes great open field cuts. Master will run over you.
Question for Dan Canfield. Dan was asking a couple questions last week as well, I recall. His question is very similar to what we talked about earlier, Bill, about how a coach keeps a team focused during a bye week. So we were talking earlier about the schedule and the process, things you kind of get done. Focus is a different question because it's kind of like, where do you want your players to spend their mental energy? Do you want them to get away from football, or do you want them to stay immersed in it and keep their minds focused on that? What's the best process there in your experience?
I think it has to be a good balance. It really does. You want to focus, for example, on Northwestern too quickly because that's a ways away. But I found this out, and this is what it's like, Jerod, that we've talked about the same situation in bowl games. How much practice? You practice a lot, you practice a little, you practice real hard, you practice light, and here's what I found out, there's no magic formula. There is none. A team has its own personality. The job of a coaching staff is you got to be kind of a sports psychologist. You got to realize what motivates your players. And even more to the position coach. As a position coach, some guys need a lot of film work. Some guys need a lot of repetitions. Other guys may have more mental work. So, you have to do that and figure out what's the best way. You treat players the same, but you motivate differently, and that's the key to being a great football coach.
That's a very good point. And some of our commenters here just sort of saying hello. Hi, everybody. How you doing online? Good to see you, and thanks for coming back this week. Good crowd out there this week for the Gridiron Nation Online. Again, if you want to make a comment, you want to ask a question of Coach Conley about the Ohio State season so far or what is to come, just put a comment there in the comments tab. Hit the enter button. I'll be able to read it live right here and get Coach caught up on what you want to know about today as we talk Buckeye football during this bye week. The first of 2 bye weeks. There's a bye week coming in 3 weeks from now. So they're going to play a couple games. They'll go on another bye, and they set up with 4 to finish. And those are 4 big ones in the middle there. Wisconsin's obviously the next home game here coming up in a few weeks. Northwestern comes next Friday night. And here's the question, Bill. This is one that we're not familiar with around here covering Ohio State. Is a Friday night game. Some programs around the country have had to do this now. So Ohio State's going to adjust its practice schedule next week and move up to Sunday practice. Right. And then they'll go into their media availabilities a day earlier than they ordinarily would. They hit the road on Thursday, a day ordinarily quicker than they would do it. So the thought of playing on a Friday night, nobody necessarily loves it. But how do you handle it? How do you make the best of it?
Well, I mean, that's the same type of thing we talked about. On a bowl schedule or something, you prepare your schedule in relation to when the game's being played. So that's not a big deal. Players can adjust to that. You know, the concept of playing on Friday night is that's a different thing. You know, that's a thing that being a former Ohio high school coach and a college coach, you really don't like that. Stinks. It stinks because that's the night for high school football. Woody would be going nuts right now. But it has to be done. TV rules because of money rules. It's going to be the way it is. But for the players, there'll be no problem.
And we've had some questions about that here at the station this week about why are they playing a Friday night game? What's the purpose of doing it? And I'll give you a real quick behind the look here of television. So on Saturdays, they've basically got 3 TV windows in which you can put a game. Noon, 3:30, and 7:30 to 8 o'clock, the primetime window. Those are 3 opportunities to sell advertising for a game, okay? If you go to Friday night, you open another window for selling ads. Yep. It is that simple. It is a dollars and cents issue. If you get teams to move their game to Friday night, you then have a new opportunity to sell ads and make money on the game. So that's why Friday night, why Thursday night became such a big deal there for many years, why the NFL moved to a Thursday night game, because they wanted another window in which they could sell ads. Here's the downside of the argument to me, Bill, and I wonder how you feel about this. I have a real trouble when you're taking your most marketable asset, which is Ohio State and the Big Ten, and putting it on Friday night. When you're immediately burying it where many eyeballs are not conditioned to watch college football. Right. So many people are going to miss the Buckeyes that week and just not know. You're accustomed to be able to, it's like memorization of television. You just turn it on and you know something is going to be there, a certain type of programming. That's not going to be there this coming Saturday, or that Saturday or that weekend because of this Friday night game. I just think it's an odd strategy to have the Big Ten put its best teams on a Friday night.
Yeah, that's the strangest part. Why would you put those? You understand why some games are played during the week. It gives some conferences a chance for exposure.
Visibility, yeah.
Yeah, but not the Big Ten. You're right. There'll be millions of people go to high school games on Friday night and will not see the Buckeyes. Now, obviously, they can tape it and all those things, but it's a new experience and one that, you know, Ohio State said we'll never do that for the home team. Well, we'll see if that really happens down the road.
I certainly hope not. That would be an absolute mutiny of Ohio, and rightfully so. Right. We love football in this state, and we love it at every level of this state, which means you can't just say, well, we'll skip the high school game. Right. High school football here is culturally very important. It is ritualistic that people in their local communities go to the game every Friday, support the local kids, support the community, raise money for the school. It's all working together, right? That's a part of the fabric of who we are as people that live and love this state. I think moving games outside that Saturday does nothing but damage those other properties. You know, it's a residual thing, right? You hurt one and you take away from others too. And you know, I hope they rethink this long term.
Yeah, and the thing about Ohio high school football and Ohio State University, because we're the one big school in the state, is it's always been a great relationship. You know, look at all the coaches Ohio State had started off as high school coaches in the state. Yeah, you can talk about almost everybody. You know, Woody, Earl. Talk about, I mean, all the great ones. Paul Brown from Massillon High School. I mean, you can go on and on and on. And the lifeblood of their recruiting is Ohio high school football players. And you want to keep that real close, and you don't want any conflicts. So, again, we hope it doesn't happen for a home game at Ohio State on Friday night.
All right, I'm going to stop complaining now. I'm sorry about that, Head Gal.
You had it right.
Get off my soapbox here. Here we go. Wanted to get into the season a little bit here, Bills, through 6 games. Let's talk about the defense and what they've done so far. We mentioned the 4th scoring defense in the country. statistics are funny sometimes. They're really, really good, Bill. And I think the biggest example of that, Michigan State tested them a little bit. They hit some passes on them, hit some chunk plays on them, got in the end zone once, but ultimately, Bill, Ohio State did exactly what it set out to do, covering at all three levels. And that pass rush, as the game goes on, it just wears you out if you're an opponent.
Well, here's the thing that I think is kind of being not talked about as much as it should, and that is the team speed of the Ohio State defense. Because there were times some running backs got to the outside, some receivers caught the ball in the open field, and all of a sudden you thought they were wide open, and we closed on them quickly. Yeah. We can run to the football, and when you can run to the football, you can make good things happen for your home. You can create turnovers and everything else. So the defense is playing at a high level. Every position. I think there's three guys that have stood out to me, have played superior defensive football. Of course, Chase Young up front. 18 sacks already or something like that, 9.5 tackles for a loss. You got Malik Harrison, who's also had 9 tackles for a loss in the linebacker spot. Talk about a guy making great tackles in the open field. And then in the defense, the whole secondary is playing good, but I want to especially talk about Fuller, our safety. He's got 2 picks now, 2 interceptions. He's the guy who keeps it all together right there, and he might be the best open field tackler of them all. He's really doing a good job.
He's a really, really good football player, and he's also a brilliant kid and a great kid. He's a great leader. He's a captain. He's the kind of kid you want on your football team.
Absolutely.
And he just checks every box. He's really special. Commenter here on NBC4's Facebook page. If you're watching us there on the Facebook page, remember, if you want to ask a question of Coach Conley, you want to make a comment about the season, put it right there in the comment tab. Terry Henry says, with the time off, what, if any, part of the team gains an advantage? And let me think of another way to rephrase that. Who needs a break? Is it the offensive lineman? Who needs a break the most?
I think the people up front, both sides of the ball.
Okay.
Because not only are you playing a game, and you know we had to play 4 quarters for some guys this week, and so when you do that, not only is it long game, but it's physical game. And think about it: you got either side of the ball, you got a 280-plus pound guy. You're having to block, or you're going to have to shed a block each play.
Yeah.
Now, you think about that. If anybody's ever been a wrestler, for example, and you wrestle for those, couple minutes, you're gassed.
Yeah.
Now, imagine that with 280-pound guys on your body for 4 quarters. Yeah. Those guys really need it.
It's like getting into 70 consecutive car crashes.
Exactly.
And just being okay with it. But those guys, we were talking about them the other day with Kevin Wilson, the offensive coordinator of Ohio State, about, he's an offensive lineman himself, and so he's really into that culture and how those guys have developed with Coach Studrawa, who is the offensive line coach there. And, Bill, they've had some injuries they've had to deal with here a little bit of late. Brandon Bowen got hurt and was kind of in and out of the lineup, didn't really play at Nebraska. Alabi came in and was player of the game at Nebraska and did a great job. He also has had some injuries to deal with, and so they've had to kind of, work with that a little bit. Thayer Munford got hurt in the Michigan State game and came back in the next series and played a great football game. I think what my point is that they're not only showing a little bit more depth than maybe we realized they had, but they are tough. T-U-F-F, tough guys. And the offensive production reflects that.
Yeah, and here's the thing about it, too. You got to understand there's a guy behind you who wants your spot.
Yeah, that's true.
And that'll
that's a good motivator.
That'll make you stay on the field a little bit longer. They're tough guys, they're physical guys, and they really take coaching well and they play well together. Yep. And that unit right there is as good as I've seen Ohio State in a long time.
Well, we're going to get on to the second half of the season now. Again, if you've got a comment or question for Coach on the NBC4 Facebook page, just put a comment right there. I'll read it, and before we go off here in the next few minutes, we'll get that question on to Coach. Talking about the Big Ten weekend here, obviously Ohio State gets an opportunity to play spectator a little bit and watch what goes on around the league. A couple really good matchups this week, Bill. I'll start with Penn State on the road at Iowa, a place that Ohio State fans know very well. Not an easy place to win, and Kinnick at night is something special now. Yeah. Penn State has been rolling of late. Man, they've looked good, both sides of the football. They did it again last week against a banged-up Purdue team. They still looked really in command of the football game. That, I think, will be a different kind of test for them, Bo. I'm very curious to see how Penn State reacts at night at Kinnick.
Yeah, I was very disappointed in Iowa's showing against Michigan.
Offensively, it was terrible.
They were terrible. It was an ugly football game. And I don't know what Harbaugh was thinking when he said they were making improvements.
What with the offensive coordinator, right, getting on the same page?
But here's the deal. Can Penn State deal with the environment more than they can Penn State?
Yeah.
I mean, more than Iowa.
Right.
Penn State is a better football team, and they're surprisingly really good on defense again this year, because we thought they would, have a drop-off with some graduations. But they're playing really good defense. The quarterback's getting better and better. Their offensive skill is better than what everybody thought it was going to be. So they're the superior team. But, man, that is a tough place because the crowd is right on you. And they're loud, and they'll stay after it for 4 quarters. Yeah,
Clifford, the new quarterback at Penn State's answered every challenge so far. Number one, that skill player for Penn State is fast as could be, and a real problem for defenses. So we'll see if their skill comes to fruition and they get it done on the road at a very tough place. Also this week, as we mentioned earlier, Michigan State is at Wisconsin. Very curious to see how Michigan State bounces back. It was physical here. Look, it was physical both ways. Ohio State had bruises. Those guys had bruises. It was a tough fight for them. How they then turn around and go to Madison with the big physical offensive line that pounds you almost every snap. The tricky thing for Wisconsin, though, they throw it better this year. And that's the thing, that the play action might kill you if you're not careful against them.
Well, here's the 2 things. First of all, Michigan State really wanted to win the game against Ohio State because that would give them that extra motivation. Now they're at a point, their schedule is brutal down the road. And now they got to go up against Wisconsin, who's another physical football team. And there are a lot of the Spartans on the turf Saturday, much more than the Buckeyes. So they are dinged up some. We know that for sure. And again, Wisconsin is always a sound team defensively. They're playing great defense this year. And up front, those guys are massive.
Yeah, it's hard to move. You mentioned that earlier. Imagine doing that, moving those guys for a game. That's tough. Yeah, pack a lunch. Also in the league this week, here's a game I didn't know that we thought we'd be talking about before the season started, but now undefeated Minnesota is home to Nebraska. Nebraska's got some injury issues, including at quarterback with Martinez. Not sure if he's going to play in that game. It's in Minnesota. Does Minnesota stay unbeaten?
I think it'll be a close game, but I think Nebraska's a better team.
Really?
I think they got better skill. When it comes to chance of making big plays, that's the Nebraska team.
Interesting. Minnesota's thrown the ball so well this year, but boy, that Purdue game they played, I mean, it was with the first 19 passes they threw, they were completed passes, and I don't know if were any of them longer than 10 yards. They're long handoffs. It didn't have to be. It was brilliant strategy, and they did a great job.
Well, here's what we'll find out too. I thought I told you this last week. I think the Nebraska defense was unsound. The way they tried to defend Ohio State.
Oh, it was very poor.
And they had gaps open. They had seams that weren't taken care of. If they don't improve that part of them, then they could have a long day at Minnesota for sure.
Yeah, and if you're keeping an eye on the Wolverines, they're on the road this week. They're at Illinois. That is a noon kickoff. So that's the Big Ten look. Biggest thing Ohio State has to do next week with Northwestern. We saw Northwestern, by the way, is also off this week, so it's not like either team has an advantage with rest or whatever. So Northwestern comes in with the same rest as Ohio State does at home. What about the Wildcats do we know so far? It's been a bit of a struggle start for them.
Yeah, surprise. Everybody thought they'd be a little better.
Yeah.
But they always play us great. They always play really, really good against us. The biggest thing that Ohio State's got to fight is thinking they're going to be an easy game.
Sure.
You always talk about Northwestern, but for some reason, as a college football player, you're supposed to beat Northwestern. But they've been a pain in the neck to us in the past, and we can't overlook them. So we have to treat them the same in terms of film study, practice, intensity, and concentration. That's the key.
Yeah, they have the transfer quarterback from Clemson, who was a very highly recruited kid out of high school. Wasn't going to play at Clemson because of Trevor Lawrence being there, so he transfers over to Northwestern. And he, I don't know, has had a great start this season. I don't think it's necessarily gone as well as they were hoping it would. They just haven't done anything spectacularly. They have played pretty good defense. If you saw them play Wisconsin earlier this year, that was a game that was pretty competitive, and they did a very nice job defensively, bottling up Wisconsin's rushing attack. They did what they had to do. They just couldn't figure out a way to break through and score. Yeah. And I think that's going to be the case with a lot of teams with Wisconsin this year too.
Yeah, and they're going to have trouble stopping the Buckeyes because you're exactly right. Northwestern, what they want to do is keep the score low.
Yeah.
They want to keep it 30 or below, and then they have a chance. Maybe sometimes the temperature gets that way too, but if they can do that, they have a chance. But it's going to be an Ohio State team that scores so many points, so explosive. It's going to be tough for them to keep the Buckeyes down. Yeah.
One last thing. What are you watching this weekend? Is there a game around the country you're watching, keeping an eye on?
Well, I would always like to watch the Oklahoma-Texas game.
Oh, it's the best, isn't it? Red River rivalry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
And now you got Tom Herman out there making things interesting. He said this week it's the best rivalry in football, and he was including Ohio State, Michigan.
That's why he's out there.
He's also
not
being
here.
paid by Texas.
That's exactly right. He has to say that.
That'd be a great game though, because I think Texas has been rolling offensively of late. You love the way that they've responded since the LSU loss. This will be by far the toughest test Oklahoma has faced this year, and Oklahoma. They've been dominant on the scoreboard, but if you watch some of their games, they've been a little sluggish to start. They were sluggish against Kansas to get started. Yeah. I'll be curious to see how they respond first half. And this game, historically, has been wild.
If the teams are somewhat close, anywhere close, talent-wise, take the schedule and throw it away.
Yeah.
It's a 4-quarter war.
It's awesome. It's going to be a good one to watch this weekend. We'll be here this weekend. We've got, obviously, a lot going on here as we get set for another a week of planning, if you will, to get set for the Northwestern game next Friday night. The Gridiron Nation airs this Friday, 7:30 here on NBC4. Coach Conley and I get you set for what's been happening so far through those 6 weeks. We'll break it down a little bit more. Name some MVPs of the half season, if you will.
There you go.
Thanks so much for joining us here this afternoon online at the Gridiron Nation. We'll see you back here next week, next Wednesday.